Now pause the recording.
Pause. Hold on.
Here's the top. Thank you.
Recording. We are recording. So, hi Bert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, and Richard may have brought you up to speed, but we have a first order of business to do, which is to go over some things until 7. And so just make sure you know that. Just wanted to help set expectations, okay?
I appreciate that. I'll shut my video off and sit here in the background.
We can
Thank
hear
you.
him.
We're fine. Want to tell him, Bert, we can't hear you at this time.
You gotta unmute yourself or no?
He gave a thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you, but
Is it because of
I'm
that
sorry.
owl?
You can hear us, but I can't hear you. Okay. All right, all right. I think we're in business for the moment. All right, so so let's bring the meeting to order. Sorry for the technical delays here. It's 6:10. We'll get going. Old business discussion and consideration of commercial development review ordinances and amendments addressing the commercial solar facilities. So I think we left off at a critical spot.
We're on page 8, it looks like here.
Okay.
Anthony's comment was, this is where the board completed its work on April 21st. Or
Well,
That's it.
we had the extra meeting that messed me up.
Okay. Pardon me. Just trying to get back to where I was before.
Page 8.
Page 8 of the KV cog model. We actually completed page 8, and so we're really at the top of page 9.
No, legal responsibilities.
Yeah.
while you're coming to order, can you hear me now?
A little bit. Right, legal responsibility. So let's get into that part. Oops. Okay, for legal responsibilities, is everybody there on that page? Okay, super. So were there items that we needed to edit here? I know we still have.
I didn't offer any in my memo, but the only thing I would note is that it needs to be labeled, I guess it would be subsection C, and then where the acronym USSF is used, it needs to be changed to non-residential solar facility.
Yep. And that would be an administrative task. I'm hoping that, would Alex take on that or?
I'm hoping, I thought
Perhaps.
Anthony was going to continue to do that.
Okay,
And I assume he's going to rely on the recording to do so.
okay, sounds great.
That your understanding?
I thought that she was hired to do our minutes.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of minutes. I was thinking of revising the draft.
Oh, no, I do believe you're right. I think Anthony.
Anthony? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's, It's a good note.
So was Dan Newman notified that we were going to talk about setbacks?
I do not know that.
I do not know either.
I do recall, we did mention to him that we're gonna invite him, right?
Yes.
I recall that as well. I don't know if he was invited or not.
I don't know either.
Yeah. Usually the select board's on the emails.
Yep. But it may not have been prominent to,
Yeah, but
Just-
you know, I don't recall any highlight that we may be getting the setbacks
right.
unless they continue to follow along.
You have his number?
I don't,
And send him a text and hey, I can jump in the soon.
Or can we circle back to that sentence at a later date?
Yeah,
We will have to.
we'll have to.
So under legal responsibilities, C, we want to get back to setbacks, right? That's a really important thing because Dan made it pretty clear one time before when he was here that he wanted to be involved with that.
I mean, the legal responsibilities paragraph just seems sort of a boilerplate kind of thing.
Right.
in the height, 15, I mean, you look at most of these, they're barely over an 8-foot fence, so 12 feet would be plenty high.
Oh, you're down, you're,
I'm on page 9, right?
yeah.
Legal
We're still on legal responsibilities, aren't we? Or
Yep.
Have I fallen behind already?
No, we are. And I think Craig went to D, item D, which was height. We're on the same page?
Yeah, we are. It's just that I was on the top paragraph. I didn't realize we resolved that.
Oh. So, I think, because you had suggested that the change of the acronym was the
Yeah,
appropriate thing.
that's all I had. I don't know if others have something.
That's all I had. Anybody else have anything? Sarah, any other changes? Craig, any other changes?
In that top paragraph.
Yeah, no. So then getting on to C, setbacks, that's the one where I think we said we want to make sure we have to circle back and
Yeah.
make sure Dan's invited.
But I would like to have a conversation about that today still.
Sure.
Just so we're plugging along. Even if we circle back when we invite Dan,
We can set the stage by saying these are some of the things we're thinking
I
about.
mean, and that way he could react to whatever we come up with.
Surely. What do you have? Because the minimum, set back a minimum of 100 feet from any existing residential dwelling structure.
So in my memo, I had proposed, it's a little different and maybe the wording needs to be changed to be more consistent, but I had used different numbers. I had used 250 feet from existing public and private road right of ways, 250 feet from existing dwelling units, and for transformers and inverters, that they couldn't be located any closer than 150 feet from the property line. And the reason for that is because there's an electromagnetic field that is created by those, just like there is high tension power lines.
Sure.
And 150 feet is about the time that it reaches background.
So the recommendation from your memo was
Yeah, right.
150?
Which is number 4 on page 8 of page 3 of my memo. The difference in, is that I focused on where the solar modules are, and KV Cog is based on where the structures are, including fencing. Fencing's typically not considered a structure. So I don't know why that, but so I would just point that out. If people wanted to have it apply to modules and all other structures, I'm fine with that.
So
So you're saying that we should copy what you have in number 4 and plug it in and see here?
Well, I mean, that's just my proposal for discussion purposes. You know, I didn't think the KV cog 100-foot setback was adequate.
Right, based on that, that point about the electromagnetic field, if you want to get it back to like background kind of stuff, then you want the distance, right? So
Right.
it makes good sense. I don't know, does anybody object to that idea? Just the idea, I'm not saying it's finalized, because I think we want to make sure.
The 250. That's where I was going at.
250?
I think that was exactly also
Yeah.
what Dan was talking about too.
I don't know, Craig, if you've got that memo I had originally.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what we agreed to in the minutes on January 20th, same distance.
Okay,
We can almost make them all 250 would be all right with me.
Well, and to a certain extent, like, for example, in my memo, if you changed A to solar modules and other structures, and likewise in B, C becomes irrelevant, because a transformer or an inverter would be a structure, and it would be more than 250 feet. Well, no, I probably still need to keep it in case if there's some quirky situation where
You know, space.
the residence is quite a ways away from the property line.
okay, so I think in general, are we in agreement that the 250 mark is probably the way to suggest, and see if Dan has any objections to that?
Yeah, I think there could be circumstances where you might have a house on the adjoining parcel, but it's quite a ways from the common property line. And so 250 feet from the residential dwelling doesn't get you a whole lot. But I think we would still want to ensure that the transformers and inverters are still 150 feet away from the property line. So I would keep that. Because you don't want to say kids playing in the yard being exposed to that electromagnetic field.
Yeah, so that would be like a qualifier, 250 for the things, but then 150 for the other items that you
It
mentioned.
would be the transformers
Yeah,
and the inverters from the property line. That's a distinction.
So you don't want to do 250 from the property line on all three? Well, the road. Because, someone has a piece of property, and just because they're not close to the property line doesn't mean that someone never will be.
So I don't object to what you're talking about, Craig. I'm just wondering, 'cause, if you have transformers and inverters at 250, right? And then the solar modules are at 250. How does that work out like on the ground?
Straight line.
So
I mean,
So there can be a situation where the property's here and inverters are here, and that's 250, but the property line can be over here. So
right,
you still have to move it over.
yeah, right,
exactly,
right.
because you're taking away from the people's property.
That's right.
There's just nothing saying a house can't be there, 250 feet from a residential dwelling. I mean, if they're 250 feet from the property line, that means it can be right on the property line.
I don't think I understand.
So if the dwelling is 250 feet onto their property,
Oh, the dwelling, I got
so
you.
that means the solar farm could be right on their property line.
That's right.
So they're taking away, and the same thing with the inverters, if you put it from a dwelling, then future building is taken away
Yep.
from the people that
Yep.
own the property.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because you're saying dwelling unit, not the
So it should be property
property
line.
line, not dwelling unit.
Yeah,
So you
So-
want the 250 from the property line,
yes,
not from the dwelling.
correct.
Hmm.
So,
I don't know, given the size of lots in town,
yeah, how would
I
that
don't
work out?
know that that's really needed.
How would that work out? I'm just trying to think too, like, okay, so if I've got a 10-acre parcel square,
Mhm.
what would that be? Is that,
And your house is up at the top of it. And the next thing you know, with the way this is worded, they can come right down your property line. So when you go to do something with the back acreage, if you ever decide to, you've got a solar farm plot right there. So you should be able to protect the property.
So you're, see, I'm not sure I agree, Craig, that we should be protecting undeveloped land.
Why not? We do
Because
it
it's
in every other
undeveloped.
source.
When that person develops the land, they have the opportunity to do so in a way that they won't be able to see the solar farm on most
So-
lots in
So
Belgrade.
you're taking it away.
I mean, I have one exception to that, and that's approved subdivisions, but
So you s- I think it all should be property line. Because you
I'm
take-
just concerned that if we did that, we'd be eliminating all the smaller solar farms, potential sites for solar farms.
Well, I thought the smaller ones weren't. You know. Weren't of any value anyways.
Well, yeah, we can't get in, I mean, we can't deal with property tax issues here.
No, we're not talking about tax issues. We're talking, I mean, from what I'm understanding through this whole thing, no one's gonna put us, what you guys have been telling me right through this whole thing is no one's gonna do a small solar farm. So now you're saying, well, smaller solar farms.
Well, I was thinking one, like the size of Steve's, 20 acres.
and
If you've got 20 acres and you can only develop that inner part of the property because you have a 250-foot exclusion zone around the entire perimeter, how much acres does that leave you? That's,
it would be quite a reduction.
yeah,
Mm.
that seems unreasonable to me.
I know what you're saying. And I hear what you're saying too about the smaller ones, because we did kind of sort of back of the napkin, sort of have a discussion to say, well, smaller commercial attempts at this point would not prove to support a model that's too small. Right? I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but we said, oh, if you're trying to do a commercial thing on something that's just barely larger than a residential, that you wouldn't make money, right? And so
you're
we did
gonna-
talk about that. I hear you.
You're gonna allow people to build solar farms right on the property line.
No.
Well, wait a second. This will be better picture with a kind of a chart. As more of our people can build on the property line. George, because if they are right on the property line, but they have a 250 feet clearance from the dwelling, they can actually build them right on the property line.
You guys are right about that, and so that may be something I think that I agree with. They shouldn't be able to build right on the property line. It's a question of what's an appropriate setback
From the property line.
that's not unreasonable from the property line. for everything other, I mean, we already have one for the invert, or I've suggested one for the inverters and transformers. And so I agree that there should be one for the modules and the other, whatever other structures there are. I'm not quite sure what it should be. What would it be for some other kind of commercial use? Not much, right? It would be like 10 feet or something.
That's what I was thinking.
That isn't adequate.
Right. So somewhere between 10 feet and 250. 250? So that's a good point, and I'm glad we talked about it.
So, you know, the other factor that comes into play here is the screening requirements, because they won't be able to develop within the vegetative screening areas, other than the access road or something like that.
So how big is the vegetative screening requirement?
So,
We have visual screening requirements.
KV Cog
50.
offers none. And let's go back to just the residents for a moment. I'm suggesting
50.
that it be 250 feet along the common property line with a residential dwelling unit. So effectively, it would be a 250-foot setback from the property line.
Because you, so, no, yeah. So
That's only if there's a house on it, now,
Yeah,
I mean, so if there's no house on it, then it would still be 250, right? We take out that residential dwelling.
if it's undeveloped, I won't agree to the handling it the same as if there was a house on it.
Hmm.
So you're taking away the value.
Unless it's an approved subdivision.
So you're taking away the value just because someone hasn't done anything with their property.
Well, would we apply that same rationale to other development?
Well, I think people are entitled to be able to reserve the intentions of the use of the land as they want it. Not because.
Well,
it's
this
a-
isn't the right tool for doing that, though. The right tool for
Yeah.
doing that is zoning.
zoning, yeah. And I hear you on that, but that has gone over like a
I
lead
mean, if you
balloon.
don't want commercial development next door to residential development, this ain't the right tool.
Right.
The right tool is zoning. I mean, I'm gonna have to live with the loss of property value because of the tree service that went in next door to me. This is the way it is in Belgrade. You know, 10 or 15% reduction in my property value by an appraiser.
There are impacts to other commercial developments that impact residential dwellings.
So that's, let me see, probably I'm still walking into that zone, into that area of discussion. So here is first come, first serve. So if I go on my property and I build whatever I want, and the next door neighbor cannot do anything that they wanted eventually later in time, it's first come, first serve. If I'm aggressive and I use my land the way the ordinance says, the neighbor is left behind. Or whoever the neighbor end up being.
If I'm understanding your question or your
Yeah.
scenario correctly, the answer is yes.
Yeah. So somebody could put a junkyard next to your house.
Yeah.
In Belgrade.
As long as the ordinances don't,
Yeah.
don't,
Absolutely.
don't provide.
Yeah,
it.
what this ordinance does, and it's all it's intended to do, is not to say this kind of land use can go there and that kind of land use can go there. It's intended to mitigate the worst of the impacts of commercial and industrial development on the surrounding existing development
Right. Other
and the environment.
other types of development could also go in next to a residential house. Right? Junkyard would be one, right? You could have a trailer park. And that may not be acceptable to a lot of people, but it would be acceptable to others, and it might have an impact on an existing piece of property. That's the world in which we live in, you know, when we don't have zoning.
Yeah,
And-
a junkyard and a trailer park probably wouldn't fly in the town of Belgrade.
Well, they could if they met the ordinance. Why not?
Subdivision.
If it's,
So
all it has to do is meet
then-
the ordinance.
Then the only, if, since that's the way it is, I guess, maybe put in the most restrictive, buffer that we can, might be the way to go. What is the sort of this, the resource that you used to, come up with this, wording here, George? You got it from
I'm sorry.
the resource that you used to get number 4 set up. If you look at a special,
Oh,
state-
there's no town that has anything as stringent as that,
Because,
that I found. This would be the
So
most
here's the thing.
stringent setbacks in the state.
so by comparing other ordinances that you saw that were listed and we had, nothing was as restrictive as what you're proposing.
Not that I can recall.
So this is a comparative analysis, it sounds like, Sarah. That
So what, okay, let's talk about a little bit.
With the exception of the inverter, that I got from Mass Department of Energy Resources and Environmental Protection. And
Right.
there's 3 agencies that did this study of solar farms in Massachusetts. And this was one of the recommendations came out of that study.
I'm sorry, I didn't thought about this before coming here. Now, let's talk about an acre and how much is an acre in square footage?
43,
40,
4,
yeah.
560.
43,
560,
560, so 4,000 square feet.
43,000.
560.
43,560
60
square
square
feet.
feet. Mhm.
So when we're talking 200 to 200, say,
Step
when
taking
you
all of it,
square that,
3,500 square feet.
I'm just trying to picture this out. So,
Right. You'd have to scale it too, because that would be
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be a minimum 1 acre lot for residents. And that
so if you
probably,
actually
that won't
s-
support us
actually
commercial.
square it,
No.
Yeah, it's about 200 by,
One
it's
panel.
very
in the
close to
middle.
200 feet by 200 feet is 1 acre.
Right.
Yep.
Well, yeah, it's less than an acre. I mean, people use that as an approximation, but
Easy
Uh,
math.
less than an acre. It's 40,000 square feet.
Yep.
Um,
So does that make sense?
Yeah, I can picture it now. So
I
we're
mean,
talking,
I think the,
we're talking 20 acres, so if there will be kind of a square location, we're talking about maybe more than 4.5 or 4.5. The size of the acres when they finish. Let's see. It's just gonna take quite a lot out of any development. More than 5 by 5, actually. So, I don't know. 5 by 5. And
So I don't see anything about your buffer being 250 feet, it says 50 feet.
And then,
well, earlier I was talking about just the one regarding a residential dwelling unit. In that paragraph 6 there, I was offering different size or depth vegetative screening based on what land use you're trying to obscure the visibility of from.
so,
With the greatest being for a residential dwelling units.
so if you were to have, let's say, a 20-acre farm, which is quite square, so it will be 25 acres, and you square that up, so it'll be 5 by 5 of that, and you're taking out the amount of acreage to property line, and you have only one side that is open to the road, and the other three sides have abutters, then you only leave in about 12 acres, I can use.
Yeah. Well, and to Craig's point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, he's suggesting that it be even from the property line of that's common with an undeveloped parcel of land. So even if the back, say, was nothing on the other side of the property line, was nothing but woods, it was a wood lot, it would be 250 feet from that. Do I have that correct?
And the buffer, we are actually requiring that buffer from the road as well.
Mhm.
That's the amount of buffer. So actually, it's less. They only have, out of 25 acres, they're gonna be ending with only 9 acres to be able to do it. That's huge, Craig. That's 30%, 36%, 40% at most of the property that they can use to develop. Rather than 100,
20 acre spot.
rather than 100%. That's
We
an,
don't want them to have 100%.
was that,
We don't want them to have 100%. We want to protect people's property around the solar farms. Whether it be a dwelling or not.
I mean, I've come back to this before, but I mean, there needs to be some consistency, at least in the basis of dealing with like setbacks between how we treat smaller commercial developments and these larger ones. I mean, I would hate to see us get to the point where we're requiring an auto repair shop to have to be, that's on a 2-acre lot, have to be 100 feet from every property line, whether it's developed or not.
Well, it has to be from 300 feet from any well. So it's similarly there already in that aspect. So
And don't we,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, don't we already do that part on, I'm looking at little I3, where we talk about the demarcated by 180-degree arc with a radius of 250 from each corner of the dwelling. Don't we already do that with the commercial?
Um,
what do you
What was that?
say?
the subdivision?
Oh, is it subdivision? I thought we did it somewhere where you're supposed to go draw an arc.
Yeah, yeah. We
for
do it
What was that
for
from?
the subdivision lots.
Oh, it is subdivision? Okay,
Yeah.
apologize.
At least we do, I know that the subdivision is done like
I
that.
mean, this runs, my rationale runs counter to what Craig was saying, but so if you had a solar facility on a really large, let's say 100 acres, and you had a residence along the town road that was on the abutting lot.
You're taking an acre out of the edge.
Yeah, right, that's no big deal. But, if you took it out of the entire common property line and required a vegetative buffer along the entire, however many, 2,500 feet long property line, seemed unreasonable to me. That's why I came up with this, using the arc approach like we do in the subdivision ordinance.
So I don't, where is that?
I'm sorry, Craig.
Turning
It's,
the
at the
page.
top of the next, it starts at the bottom of page 3 and goes to the top of page 9 on my memo.
On page 9?
Yeah, it has,
This 4.
I know we're mixing apples and oranges here with this screening, but the two probably should be taken together. And you may recall, it didn't make it into this meeting packet, but this was in our, I put this in, I realized I needed to illustrate this, and this was in the packet at the last meeting. I can glad to hand it down just to illustrate that point of using the arc.
If you don't have this.
I'm not, I'm sure there are other ways to do that um, would be both reasonable and protective. I'm not saying that's the only way.
It's one suggested way. And it could work.
I mean, again, I'm approaching this from what the ordinance, the commercial development review ordinance is based on. It's a site review ordinance with whose objectives are to minimize the worst of the negative impacts of commercial development and industrial development, if we should ever get industrial development, new industrial development on existing, particularly residential development, existing development, and the environment in general, lakes, et cetera.
I know it's attached to the commercial ordinance, but it is also a solar ordinance, so we can handle it a little differently.
Well, I agree that because of the scale, the size of them, that there, you need to take that very much into account. I don't disagree with that at all. But I'd hate to see us fall into the trap of coming up with standards that nobody can comply with as a way of basically prohibiting solar power in Belgrade. I don't think that's an appropriate position for a town to take, town government to take.
In my
I
opinion,
realize there's some people in town that would disagree with me, maybe a lot
Sure.
of people.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from my perspective, with the lack of zoning, I think right now the commercial development ordinance is in place to allow commercial development. So, as compared to prohibiting a specific one. So from my perspective, I'm thinking, even though it may not be popular at all, I would say that being too restrictive so that it could never exist is not what we're trying to accomplish. I think trying to protect what we can or minimize impact where we can is the goal.
See, my problem is, right now it's a phase, and there's a lot of, these people are making a lot of money off the federal government, the state government, and it's a phase that really isn't that productive. And so right now, all this money is being thrown at it, so all this land is being taken up, and people's lands is being left unprotected, that abuts all these people. And, it's like the windmills, they don't generate enough to even pay for themselves. So, yeah, I'm gonna protect people's lands that are beside. That's the way I'm going at it. They can do it. They find the right spot, then they can go ahead and do it. But it's gonna have to take the right spot, and they're gonna have to look for it.
Yep.
And that's the way I'm going at it. I'm not saying they can't have them, but
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good reasoning from my perspective. And we're not deciding a final thing tonight, right? I think what we're trying to do is sort of wrestle with some of these dimensions and try to, in my mind at least.
Picture.
Picture it, see- Yeah, exactly.
Would it help if I put for next meeting, I didn't, I didn't thought it was gonna turn out like this. With kind of a visual on how these numbers will impact and how other numbers will look like. Because this right now, if we do 250 all around, and I mean, the little numbers that I did, you're crunching up, you're letting them only use 40% of the property. So I can do a little table simulation that will show you that as the lot is bigger, and how much kind of megawatts can fit in there, how much of that lot they can use.
So,
Assuming that the lot is kind of square.
right, yeah,
Assuming that,
right,
without
exactly.
some,
Yeah.
how you say.
If you would be willing to do
Oh, yeah,
that,
oh,
to
yeah.
help us
I'll take more
have
time
those
for that.
conversations, that would be good.
Yeah, it's good, really good visual.
Yeah, it could really supplement, I think, like with the
Yeah.
drawing. So we can say, oh,
Yeah.
this is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much, Sarah, in advance. And so, just to be clear, 1 week from today, right, we have a special meeting, right? Just for solar development ordinance, and I'd like to make sure we get Dan, I think, to come to that one, because I think this would be prime topic to talk about setback stuff.
So we should make an effort to specifically invite him.
Yep.
I don't know if that's something that you could handle.
I was about to send you an email right from her, that.
Okay.
So that will be next
Next
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thank you.
That's at 6 PM.
Yep, I think that was a plan A. I think that's what we said.
Is that okay if I send it to all the selectmen as well?
If-
Copy them,
Sure.
I'll copy everyone here.
Come on in. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Sure, to include Anthony.
Yeah, you're welcome.
would it be okay to move on to height? The item, I think it's called D. So knowing we're going to come back to setbacks. So George, did we cover the items that you wanted to for?
Yeah.
for-
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously need to come back to this and
Yeah.
see if we can reach consensus, and if not, majority opinion.
And then height, and then of course, change the acronym there, shall be no more than 15 feet high at its tallest point of any equipment. So maybe you folks could tell me, did we talk about common dimensions of panels now? Did we talk about that before? I think Steve supplied some information one time.
Yeah, and the numbers seem to me to vary depending on what meeting we had. In the KB cog is suggesting a maximum height of 15 feet. What I suggested was based on what part of town it was located in with the maximum. So for example, and the terminology used is height at full tilt. So when it's at the closest to vertical. But like in the mixed residential commercial use, that it not be any taller than 12 feet. A lot of towns use 15 feet though. Or 22 feet in the rural and general development. And I was hoping Steve would be here, and Craig, maybe you know the answer to this. The only reason I left 22 feet in there, because I saw some other towns had it, but, and I was guessing, but I don't know, that was to accommodate the kind that track the sun, that are on a pedestal, because those are taller, like the one that Steve has in his yard, which is like 18 feet off the ground.
Yeah, but those ones in Augusta, they tilt and track the sun. And
Yeah,
they're the same height as the fence, so.
right, yeah, but they can't, well,
Yeah,
I don't know, I honestly don't know.
They go from one side, you watch them in the morning, they're on the
Yeah,
roadside.
Yeah, but,
They go.
oh, I
right
see, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
versus side to side,
Yeah, they don't do side to side, they go.
yeah.
Like a
That's
season,
right.
right?
Am I
10
incorrect?
modules on them.
They're like this in the morning, looking east.
Yeah, right, no, I understand what you're saying, yeah, no, I've noticed the same thing, but did Steve in his proposal that this board approved include, he had ones on pedestals in the back, didn't he? Or am I wrong about
I
that?
don't think so.
No, he had the kind you're describing.
No, we had fixed units. he didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. I thought he did. I thought he had some
As
that
he
were
was talking
trackable.
about changing. He was in here one time, he was mentioning about changing to a rotating, but what it came forward to us with was fixed panels.
Because I'm fine with, 12 feet if those pedestal ones aren't really, in play.
I don't think they are, because those ones in Augusta, the ones up in Farmington are fixed.
Right. Yeah, those
So-
don't move. I've never seen
The
those.
ones in Augusta are the same, look like they're the same height as the ones in Farmington, except for the
Yeah,
rotate.
right.
So, I would say 12 feet as well.
And that's a function of technology. I mean, just saying that for whatever cost, you can have these things that tilt like this and not have to gobble up more panels that are fixed, right? You could get more usage out of,
Well, they just track it, like she was saying, there's, 8, 10 of them going across there, and they're facing like this, and they just rotate.
right?
And those things are, so you don't even get really a peak height, because they're like 3/4 away.
Yep.
3/4 away.
Understood.
I mean,
And-
this is kind of a statement of the obvious, but, if we establish the height, maximum height that at some point precludes, some newer technologies or we may be driving people to larger acreage
Right.
facilities than they would have otherwise proposed.
Mhm.
And so we need to be cognizant of the unintended consequences.
That's why I was asking about the efficiency, because when you tilt like that, you get greater efficiency of one panel, any one panel, right? Because it tracks the sun the whole time,
Mhm,
rather than gobbling up lots of land
mhm.
and having numerous things maybe fixed in different positions. I mean, theoretically speaking, one could argue, oh, maybe in the old days, that's the way they would have done it or something. I don't know.
But I haven't seen any multiple panels. I've seen a ton of solar panels. I've done up through Newport several times, all the way up, through there. I've been, I've seen tons and tons of solar panels, and I've never seen solar panels doubled up.
Okay.
Well, what might help the developer is saving on the amount of framing that they use.
Right, because that's money. That's an
That's money.
expense, right?
If they're taller, all the way to 15, I can envision a solar panel the length of 22 feet, because that's standing up.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of crazy, but adding that extra 3 feet is just helping them to crunch down the amount of framing that they might be using.
So just to wrap this one up, before we have to move on, the way KB Cog worded it, I don't think is all that precise. And based on our discussion right now, I think the way I developed it also is not fully needed, but maybe that the first part of mine would be a good substitute for the KB Cog language, so that it would read maximum solar module height as measured from ground level to module's highest point at full tilt shall not exceed 12 feet. And leave it at that.
Oh,
And it doesn't matter, because it would be town-wide.
that could work.
I'm blue with them.
Okay. And so a time check here, we are at 6:55 or 6:57, so just a few more minutes. Do we want to talk about the utility notification item, or is that? Actually, so George, from your memo, we go from maximum solar module height to visual screening requirements.
Yeah,
What?
and there was one I had above there.
Oh, did I
We may
miss it?
need to, once we have the whole package, look at the order of these, because I had a suggestion that KB Cog didn't, that the solar system be designed by a Maine registered electrical engineer. Why they don't have that in there, I mean, that just seems so basic to me, but
Right. I would support that idea myself. I don't know, do you guys feel that was be a good thing?
I mean, that's a
Sarah?
quality assurance kind of thing, you know, pretty minimal. but-
Right, right.
Can you reiterate that again?
So it would be this. right
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Oh, number 3, the solar energy system shall be designed by a Maine registered electrical
So
engineer.
that wouldn't be the entire facility, that would be the electrical part of it. Inverters, transformers.
Okay.
Transmission.
I do not view that as being overly burdensome.
No. no,
Myself.
No, that's pretty minimal.
It's minimal. And is it,
I would certainly be leery of any proposal that came before us that wasn't designed by an electrical engineer.
and for consistency's sake, do we do something like that in the commercial development ordinance for other things? I think the answer is yes, depends on the
Yeah,
trade.
I mean, it isn't electrical engineers, but I mean, professional engineers.
Right, because we refer to different trades for certain
Right,
expertise.
yeah.
we have to be a main one, it cannot be someone registered. in
Well,
another state.
and there is a reciprocity provision, at least, yeah, there's a reciprocity provision. So somebody from out of state can work in Maine. It's been a long time since I looked at those regulations. Last I knew, it was like for 180 days.
All right, thank you, George, for that. I've got 6:59. Are we okay to stop there? Which means we've talked about, not decided on, but talked about minimum setbacks. I think we have some understanding of what we're hoping to gain out of that one. Sarah, thanks in advance for coming up with basically the model that you're going to represent,
Mhm.
those various things. So that will be helpful. We talked about maximum solar height. We've also talked about the solar energy systems, the electrical part being designed by a Maine registered electrical engineer. Are we okay to stop right there?
I think we need to.
And then next Thursday, we talk setbacks and get it more in depth because it's a special.
Setbacks and hopefully visual screening, because the two kind of go hand in hand.
Agreed, very much agreed. So Richard, are we okay stopping right there? Have a note?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. That should take, going back to. Okay. All right, so that should take care of old business for the moment. We're on to new business. And Richard, do you want to help guide us through application A from Adam Gardner?
Sure. So essentially, a bunkhouse was considered total loss after being destroyed by a tree. And Adam is just wanting to rebuild that bunkhouse. Same size, same footprint, same everything.
Great. Hey, Adam.
Wrap it up in a nutshell.
Perfect.
We spoke about backing it up, and there's a septic over that.
There's a septic tank for both buildings, kind of dead center, between both buildings and the driveway itself, right there. Originally, a homeowner had talked to that big storm last July, was it June?
Yeah, the microburst.
Yeah, microburst. So
Ah.
originally the homeowner talked to Gary, and Gary said just tear it down, rebuild it identical, but there's no history of that. So I came and talked to Richard, he said, yeah, let's do a permit, but same height, same size, same everything. I think they want to try to reuse the deck, but the rest of it's pretty much total loss.
On your site plan, this little 16 square foot thing, what's that?
Townhouse.
Okay,
We're not touching it.
I was just curious.
touching it. So pretty much kitty corner between that, the existing house and driveway is, that's where the pumping station there.
Okay.
I think it holds real permit, I don't know if I can see it here on there. But yeah, that's not being touched. Just that one structure next to the water.
Looks like the camp got hit too.
The one behind it is actually neighbors,
Oh, that's the
Oh.
neighbors, okay.
literally right on the line.
Yeah,
Maybe
I was-
a foot off the line.
Hence why I thought it was theirs.
Yeah, no, but the neighbor's house was a little further down, didn't get hit. We there and redid that. This been going back and forth with insurance companies
Oh.
for the past year.
Adam, is that the neighbors?
Yes.
That one there?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
And the
Wow.
foundation's gonna be like the current foundation.
Posted that.
Post, yeah.
Yeah, has a little, hardly half bath, just cover, toilet. That's it. Everything would be identical.
Thanks. Yeah, lose my phone.
And it seems like the land is pretty level, flat almost. A slight grade, I'm sure. And I was curious, where's Long Pond Drive? Just trying to-
It is right behind the big storage building village.
Oh, okay, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, I went down and that place was a mess.
Yeah. You see it on the street.
All over.
Right.
I'm not talking just this place, but that whole road was a
Yep.
mess.
Yeah, that was a mess.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've asked some questions. What issues do we have with this particular application?
I don't
Anything?
have any-
No. Craig, anything? Sarah, anything we want to talk about?
I mean, we addressed the usual question that comes up, and that is, can it be moved back at all? And it sounds like the answer is no.
So,
I don't really see any place to move it. I mean, you'd be like splitting hairs over there, going
Yeah.
back a
Yeah.
little bit to the side.
There's very minimal space between the road and the water. So these camps like that right in there, pretty snug and tight.
Yeah.
So if there's a
It looks like it from the picture.
So it's a separate tension behind them.
Just like every town.
4 years ago, maybe, or something, 5 years ago, there, no problem.
okay. So let me just state the obvious, to either, whatever decision we're going to make, we have to go through the findings of fact and conclusions of law. Richard, do you happen to have one of those?
Fine, that. You didn't get one, Peter?
He was
Hang on.
published last week.
I've got one for the commercial. Hang on, that's
Oh, well, never
commercial.
mind, he gave it to, Mr. Baker.
Okay,
and,
I'm sorry, I did
George.
not
That's
include
okay.
that in your packet.
that's okay, thank you. Maybe others have it, I just didn't see it in mine. Like, so we do go to,
You folks, when you folks see that, I should step over real quick, you requested the French copies of the
Yeah.
findings and
Oh.
facts, and I do have those for you.
okay,
Chit chat.
okay. Alrighty. Okay. So, thanks, Adam. It takes a few minutes to go through this. You've been through this before. and Thanks for your patience. Really appreciate it. Okay, so the applicant is going to be, can I say Adam Gardner, or is it GNL?
For the general contract, you would be fine. You have to put a name for Pat Gardner.
I think we're okay.
George and Sarah, you got yours?
Yeah, we do.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And and this is going to be for, is it Tom Allen? No.
Tom Alter, ALGER.
And the address is at 20 Long Pond Drive.
Long Pond Drive, yeah.
Google couldn't find it.
Right.
No.
I could, yeah,
But-
I looked.
You go down Long Pond Drive, right behind the storage building in the village, there's a yellow house, and there's a red one.
Yeah.
There's another red one right after it.
Well, I suspected it was down there, and as soon as I saw that hook-shaped old pier wharf from the hotel
Yeah.
up the shore, I knew that I was in the right
So
area.
can you point out where it is right here in the map?
It is this one right here. Those two.
Those two here?
Yep, those two. That's like a garage with like an apartment.
So which
or
one is the
something.
one you're doing?
It's, doesn't show it. It's right there, down
Okay.
by the water. And then next one past it.
Oh, right here, right here. I have more here, hold on a second.
We rebuilt the one after that this past fall, or actually still working on it. So it doesn't actually show it.
So it'll be like right over here. then.
So this is the main camp right here,
Yeah,
and then that's the garage.
yeah,
Some kind of living space, and then this one's like right there.
all right,
And
thanks.
that other one's the neighbor, very end of the road.
This says it's right here.
Yeah,
You know where we are right here?
yeah, I do. I figured it out eventually.
I couldn't
Mostly
figure, I couldn't figure it out exactly because it doesn't.
Part of
show
it was
here.
I started off with a guess, and for once I was right.
Oh, this one is even better. Now you really have all the trees and everything else. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Actually
Yeah, you
pretty-
can't really see.
Yeah,
it.
a lot of trees there, actually.
There's a couple less from this picture.
Good
Um,
point.
Right in front of this dock right here, it's right underneath where that tree was,
Alright.
pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think right between most of those camps, a couple huge pines came down, just missed them, they were completely destroyed them. They actually went over like 3 feet one way or the other.
So bear,
The landscape.
yeah, it did, didn't it? So bear with me, we'll go through this as we have in the past, taking care of some of the administrative stuff, but I'll just read it out loud. So Bert, bear with us, we go through this process, please, and then we'll get on to your application. But this will be a preview of what we're going to be doing with you as well. So under the findings of fact, so the applicants on the date, that's today's date, 5/5/2022, applied for a shoreline permit for the purpose of removing a bunkhouse rebuilt exact same size and height. Was considered total loss. The application was presented to the planning board on May 5th. These findings of fact and conclusions of law were developed in conjunction with the consideration of the application of the permit application. Based upon the application materials, testimony, statements, evidence, documents, and other materials submitted to it in the above findings of fact, the Belgrade Planning Board finds that the project is permitted to rebuild exact same size and height under section 14, table 1 in the ordinance, and further makes the following conclusions based on the applicable provisions of section 16D of the ordinance. That 1, that it will maintain safe and healthful conditions. So we'll do a roll call vote to make sure we get everybody. So by a vote, the board found that this standard was met, and I included the language of by application submitted submissions in public record. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes,
George,
Yes,
I too. So that's 4 in favor, none opposed. 2, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. So by a vote, the board found this standard was met based on the same things. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
yes,
I too am in favor, so that's 4 in favor, none opposed. 3, will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. So by a vote, the board found this standard was met based on what was submitted. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
yes,
me too, that's 5 in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed. 4, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, or other bird or wildlife habitat. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I two in favor. Four in favor, none opposed. Five, will conserve shore, cover, and visual, as well as actual points of access to inland waters. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I two am in favor, four in favor, none opposed. Will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in a comprehensive plan. By a vote, the board found the standard was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
me too, so four in favor, none opposed. Seven, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I two, four in favor, none opposed. Eight is a long one, is in conformance with the provisions of section 15, land use standards. By a vote, the board found that the standard was met on the evidence in the record and further as follows. We have a list of things to go through here. Bear with us. A lot of these are non-applicable, and you've seen this before. Thanks. So A is under minimum lot standards. Is that just simply NA?
Mm.
Minimum lot
Yeah,
standards?
it could go either way. NA is fine.
Okay. B, principal and accessory structures.
That's
That's,
that.
that is, so we're saying yes, I guess. C, campgrounds.
and
D, individual private campsites. E, commercial and industrial uses.
then,
F, parking areas.
and
G, roads and driveways.
then,
H, signs.
and then,
I, stormwater runoff.
That'll be out.
J, septic waste disposal systems. It's could we say yes? I mean, I don't, there's nothing proposed, but,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's NA, I think.
Either way.
okay.
Yeah.
My favorite, K, essential services.
NA.
Thank you.
That's an easy one.
This one is easy too. Mineral exploration and extraction. M, agriculture, better not be. Right. N, timber harvesting and land management roads.
Nope, nothing on harvest.
O, clearing or removal of vegetation for activities other than timber harvesting.
That's NA.
P, hazard trees, storm damaged trees, and dead tree removal. So
It's NA.
NA. Exemptions to clearing and vegetation removal requirements.
NA.
R, revegetation requirements.
NA.
S, erosion and sedimentation control.
and then, that was a premier.
I would say NA.
T, shoreline stabilization.
NA.
U, soils.
NA.
V, water quality.
That's applicable since
Yep.
stormwaters.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed. W, historical and archaeological sites.
And then,
And X, resource protection. No. So we have one, two. By my count, three things that we're voting on. They are principal and accessory structures, stormwater runoff, and water quality. So we are saying that by a vote, the board found that this standard was met as follows. Oh, wait,
We're voting.
yeah, voting for this entire slate. So are we okay with that? So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
me too. Four in favor, none opposed. Oh, let's start with that. And then lastly here, so conditions of approval needed to meet required shoreline zoning ordinance findings in section 16D. So this is one that's a standard one unless it's deemed unnecessary. So one, manage stormwater runoff from new or expanded structures in accordance with section 15I of the Belgrade Shoreline Zoning Ordinance and Maine DEP's best management practices as outlined in the conservation practices for homeowners publication. Such measures are to be put in place prior to building use. Note, this is a standing condition that applies to all permits unless deemed unnecessary by the planning board based on the following rationale. So does anybody feel that this is not applicable or so? Right, so it is in, right? So standard stuff. Any other conditions we wish to add to this? No. Okay, so at this point, let me turn the page. So based on the above findings of fact and conclusions of law on 5/5/22, the town of Belgrade Planning Board approved by a vote the shoreline permit application of I said GNL Contracting for Tom Allen, with the above conditions and at a meeting on, that's today's date, 5/5/22. Develop these written findings of fact and conclusions of law on today's date. Today's date. So this is where we vote. So in favor of this, so Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
by 2 in favor, so that's by a vote of 4-0. Application's approved. It'll be mailed.
So I'll make sure it says alter. I don't know why head scratching is the greatest.
Yeah, I wrote down for Tom Alter.
Alter. Perfect.
Thank you.
Your signature?
Okay. Oh, is that the original? Thanks, Adam.
Right.
Okay, so I'm on the third one. So-
I remember he was one of the first ones we ever hired when I started. Yeah, an application there.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Yeah, so that's that one. Great. Okay. So Bert, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Can you hear me any better now? I've tried to play with my settings.
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Very faint.
You have to turn that out.
Maybe. So let me go. Try again.
Is that better?
It is now.
Okay, 'cause I've got my microphone setting all the way up, so.
Yeah, it's on our end.
I never saw that red. There's something red could have been. Kaida. Oops.
Can you hear us, Bert?
I can, the echo is back, but I can hear you. And I hear myself echoing as well.
I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Is there a phone number that I could call in and just mute?
Just 1 second. You turn on.
There we go. There we go.
maybe the issue is it's too close to your laptop in front of you. Perhaps.
Bert, is that better?
Yeah,
Let's try and get through it.
we'll push through.
Okay.
So in this application, Bert called me and said, I think I did a boo-boo, and he said I put together just a deck platform, if you will, and it was encroaching upon the neighbors. So I went out and did a site evaluation and did some measuring. It was encroaching, and so I wanted him to either remove or do something with it, so he was no longer encroaching. And so this is his plan, and we to build a 10.5 by 10.5 wood deck with a standard seam roof, which is 12 by 12 feet. Two sides with half walls, two sides open. It'll be used for barbecue equipment. And as George pointed out, we didn't have any side views, so earlier Bert did put together a side view, which I think everybody should have in the packet. I added it in last minute. So to give you a little bit better visual. I think I'm the only one that doesn't have it.
Richard, is that this one? We've got a side
Yeah.
view.
Yes. So if you look at the
Yep.
map of the property, you can see that where he's placing it is on the line, not encroaching any longer. However, he does cut through the 75-foot shoreline mark. He is under the footprint based upon his calculations over to the right. He has some room to grow, so to speak.
Are you talking 20% rule?
I'm talking the setback for the 75 to 100 feet.
Oh.
Which would be, am I incorrect? Be the 1,500. So, excuse me, 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, I believe the code reads 1,000 square feet within the first 75 and 1,500 total within the first 100.
I believe you are correct.
So
It happens occasionally.
Using the footprint.
And how big is the lot?
Let me do the math.
Was it 10,300 square feet? Like a quarter acre?
Yeah, it's basically 100 by 100. One corner is about 90 feet, the other corner is about 112 feet. The shoreline is like 99 and the back lot's like 112. So rounding 100 by 100.
Okay. And the new proposed barbecue deck is going to be right adjacent to the septic holding tank, which is underground, correct? So it's just going to be there next to a flat spot.
Yeah, those two green circles, if you have a colored copy, are 30 to 32 inch pine trees. So it's basically up against those pine trees, but not sitting on any roots, and then off of the septic tank,
Gotcha.
holding tank.
So are there any issues, planning board, for this particular thing?
I wonder, you know, this is like this. How is it? Now, who made this better?
Berkeley, the applicant.
It's very nice.
It is nice.
I thought you made it with your new software.
Did I say Berkeley? I did that.
Yeah, it's
Hey, I got a good deal on a bridge across the Kennebec for you.
yeah.
Some oceanfront property in Arizona.
It's also like this and this is a. Yeah. So can we restate what is it that he wants done?
So what he wants to do is essentially build a platform,
Yeah,
first off, and then he wants to make one side, two sides and have half walls. And then other two sides be open, and then put a roof over it, which is 12 by 12. So he's got a bit of an overhang,
or you mean like half walls?
half walls.
Yeah.
So the structure, I don't have that one in front of me, the height of the structure.
If you look at the
Oh,
side,
if-
so this will.
Okay, add that, okay, there's no other way to go.
Right.
If I can help a little, Richard. The back height and the front height is to make a shed type roof, which actually matches the same roof pitch line as what's shown on the plan view of the large shed. And basically on two of the walls, on two of the four facades, I want to just create a half wall, just so basically the neighbors aren't seeing the backside of my grill.
Gotcha.
Just trying to be a good neighbor.
Thank you.
And of course, the lakeside and the campside would be the open.
LG shed, was that it?
Large shed.
Large shed, that could exist in there already,
Yes, it's already there.
but it is in a 10 feet swing.
I think that was there when you bought it, wasn't it, Bert, that shed back there?
My understanding is a gentleman by the name of Emu put that shed in 1962 when he bought it off of the family that ran the ice cream store in downtown Oakland. And he put two wheels or an axle underneath it and hauled it from Oakland and dropped it there in 1960, 1962.
Cool.
Yeah, when we brought the property 4 years ago, we lowered the median age of the 5 camps there by about 40 years.
Yeah.
They're all former Kennebec camp volunteers. These families have been coming to Maine since the 60s, volunteering at Camp Kennebec.
I couldn't find South Tall Pines by Google. Is that the road right near Stevens, Janet Stevens' place?
So if you're coming from Town Hall, going down Route 8, you go past Taylor Woods and past Spalding Point, and you go down the little gully where the outlet is. It's just after that on the right.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
And the name of the road well reflects all those little green circles that I have on this plot plan. There is nothing but 60, 70 foot, 30-inch diameter pine trees everywhere.
Well,
Beautiful, right? But
We're very lucky folks.
great. Very flat land there.
I was going to add that because that was one of the questions that I heard you ask previously. It's flat and it almost pitches away from the shoreline. I would be willing to bet where this barbecue proposed location is 6 to 8 inches lower than the shoreline.
Really? Is that
Yeah.
something?
Yeah,
it's gotta be a first in Belgrade.
Did that road have a sign up on it earlier in the spring that said part of it was flooded?
that is literally the next driveway.
Okay, got it.
And that is the lady that rents that property. The road goes right through her property. And apparently she was upset with UPS drivers.
Oh,
I believe some of our fine police officers have been called there many, many times this spring.
okay.
Yeah, it's just prior to that.
Because I live not far from where you are. And so,
Oh.
well, when I used to drive to work, I would go by that every day. So.
Yeah.
I think that's the same lady that just cited for a violation, because I was down that way today. Funny Bert mentioned UPS because the neighbor's house was the Beers application that we did the other day. I went down to see how it was going. They had started yet, but Mrs. Beers is there and spoke about the lady down there whom I cited for a shed that they built too close to the water. Was bickering about the UPS. I guess she went right off on Mrs. Beers. What are you doing having packages delivered? I was like, what?
Huh.
So it's
Who knew?
strange.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not seeing any problem with like a 20% rule, right?
I'm guessing not. So the existing structures add up to 968 square feet. Is that what you got?
Just quick math, yeah. I was right on there.
And 20% of 10,300 is
2,000.
2,060.
Yep.
We don't know the square footage of the gravel drive, which is the only thing, and I have a hard time believing that it's gonna bring it up to 2,000 square feet. So I'm guessing not, even though we don't really have the numbers in front of us. There's one other issue though that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know how to deal with it, but after we're past that.
Okay. Do you happen to have dimensions of that gravel driveway, Bert?
Bear with me for about another 15 seconds. I can give you that answer.
Okay.
About 1,178 square feet.
Okay. Thank you. So we're getting close.
Close, but no cigar.
Yeah, right. So our concern there is to not exceed 20% of lot coverage, Bert, with impervious stuff. So that's where we're coming from.
Yeah, unvegetated surfaces is the actual language in
Thank
the
you.
ordinance.
But yes, understood.
But it will limit what you can do there in the future. The other issue, and I kind of mentioned this in passing in my email to you, was and I indeed did get the wrong end of the stick. I didn't understand that the old barbecue. I thought the old barbecue was indeed an old barbecue, not, that this was a replacement for an existing structure that had been there for
Oh.
a gazillion years. That's not the case. So this is essentially a new structure. But-
Well, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page there. Where the dotted old barbecue was, there was an 8x8 deck there when we bought it.
Oh, okay, and that was demolished.
That was demolished in my misstep that Richard
Okay.
noted earlier.
Bringing that up. So this is the same size, and it's
Nope.
more conforming with the 10-foot property setbacks, but it's less conforming with the 75-foot setback from the lake. So the question is this a more non-conforming use?
Oh, yeah.
Can it be a wash?
What's that?
Can it be a wash?
I don't know.
It's more conforming in one way and less
Yeah.
in another, so it's kind of a wash. Isn't it?
Well, yeah. I don't know the answer to that question.
And then that's kind of what I said in my email. I don't know if this is non-conforming or conforming. I don't know what it's, I don't know what to say. But anyway, like Greg said, I mean,
He
he's
caught on
doing good
that.
on, good on one hand, not so good on the other, kind of washing both. And I don't believe the shoreline zoning ordinance speaks specifically of this situation, to be honest.
No, the only language is in section 12 on page 7 of the ordinance, where it says, except as otherwise provided in this ordinance, a non-conforming condition may not be permitted to become more non-conforming. Actually, even that isn't really necessarily.
Well, if you took the old barbecue,
Was non-conforming.
was entirely non-conforming as far as lot setbacks.
Right, but it didn't meet the 75-foot setback.
Right. Is it wash? Not wash.
I
But
don't
it's
see
not,
that.
on the other hand, it's not exceeding the square footage of between 75 and the lake. So it's not exceeding that
No, it's not.
square footage.
Right, no, it's not. It's just the fact that it's not set back 75 feet
Right.
by 5 feet.
I say it's a wash.
I mean, I know that he's gonna do this, but if he would just cut it off like 5 by 10 and still keep the roof, would that meet the ordinance?
I mean,
Because the roof would still be over it.
yeah.
So you,
yeah,
we count the
that
roof,
wouldn't-
even when there's no floor, the roof will count.
I mean, the only way to get it to meet the 75-foot setback is to move it back 5 feet. And assuming that pine tree isn't in the way, then it doesn't meet the 10-foot property line setback.
Oh, you can cut it in half.
To be honest, that's how I based it on. I basically put it to the furthest back as I could on the back property lot. And then the math is what it is. There's a portion, 2/3 of it or so within, outside of the 75 foot, and there's about 1/3 of it inside the 75 foot. But I met the 10-foot back property offset.
I mean, one way to look at this is because it's replacing a previously existing barbecue deck. Has this been moved back to the greatest practical extent?
Yes, because go back and further.
Can't go any back any further.
Right.
So maybe that's the right way to approach it. I'm struggling here, but
That was exactly what my intent was.
yeah, no, the way you stated it was helpful. I guess I'm all okay with it on that basis.
I can live with that.
Yeah,
It's a unique situation, and the applicant is acting in the best interest and the spirit of the ordinance as he understands it by consulting with the E CEO.
I mean, if that old bar, so, you know, I said I got the wrong end of the stick, I actually got it right the first time, but for all the wrong reasons. The critical piece of factual information is that the old barbecue indeed was an old barbecue platform structure, and that got demolished. And this is a replacement rather than an entirely, as I stated earlier, an entirely new structure. At least that's
the way I'm seeing
kind
it
of how
too.
I'm looking at it now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Now, George, in that same section,
And you know, then you get to the left of it, you got the septic holding tank, so it can't go, kind of can't slide diagonally back that direction where the lot gets deeper from the lake.
mhm,
And then you got the driveway,
mhm.
and then you got whatever SM stands for, small shed. And large pine tree, so not a lot of options on this small lot.
Right. In that, on page 13, that same section, they talk about, in addition, the area from which the relocated structure was removed must be replanted with vegetation. Replanting shall be required as follows. Then it talks about what's going on there. So is this a place where if we're taking the square where the old barbecue structure was, right? Now it's been vacated because it was demolished. Is there an opportunity to revegetate? That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's gonna be covered with pine needles.
Yeah.
There's two big pine.
Thank you, sir.
Is that?
The vegetation is 4 inches of pine needles, and I've got it down to, over the last 4 years, I've gotten it down to 2 inches of pine needles.
Well.
All right,
yeah,
so it may
keep
not be
pine
feasible.
needles,
It may not be
Good
feasible.
stabilization.
Yeah. I was just going through that because that's what the ordinance talks about, but
Agreed. I've read all the ordinances probably 6 times now.
have you? Mhm. Okay,
I'm a construction manager by trade, so I deal.
It shows,
This
it
is-
shows.
Thank you, sir. Trying to do what's right and trying to stay dry while I cook
yeah,
steak and smoke our sausages all summer and fall.
that sounds great. Yep, so that's it for me.
Yeah, I'm okay with approving this, just with the condition regarding stormwater off the roof.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, we typically approve all newer structures with a condition of approval that the stormwater coming off the roof be handled in accordance with Maine Department of Environmental Protection's best management plans. For something as simple as this, just putting, particularly since it's a shed style roof, it would be easy enough to just at the drip line, put some a gravel trench below that so that the water, rather than running across the surface of the land, the lake, admittedly, the slope of your property goes the other direction, but would infiltrate, the water would infiltrate into the ground.
That's perfect, because the reality is one of my spring projects is to put Riverstone on the drip edge of the camp itself. And it's kind of deteriorated over the years. So one of the plans is to update that and refresh that. So
Yeah.
putting another, whatever, 12 by 6 inch strip on the backside of the shed is not an issue.
Yeah, that would be it. We can't require, we have no jurisdiction over existing structures, but that'll definitely help the way.
That will. I'm looking for a little bit more information, if you don't mind. What tax map and lot is this?
46-8, you'll see that on the bottom left corner of the plan, of the plot plan that I generated.
Okay, thanks. I was looking at the application.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's found on it, so.
Should be.
Sure there. It's just going.
Oh, yeah, I was looking up here.
Yeah, he was looking in the box in the upper right-hand corner.
Complete application would have that.
I agree.
All right. Yeah. So the applicant, what we're gonna do, Bert, is go through the same thing you saw before. So thanks for your patience. Okay. So the application was presented. Okay, this is where I go through it. So the conclusions of, oh yeah, sorry. So the application was presented to the planning board on May 5th. These findings of fact and conclusions of law were developed in conjunction with the consideration of the permit application. So based on the application materials, testimony, statements, evidence, documents, and other materials submitted to it, and the above findings of fact, the Belgrade Planning Board finds that the project is permitted to, I'm going to say relocate deck.
Peter,
Yes.
if we could just go back, I don't know how you describe the proposed project, but, we found out that it's a little different than what you described here. It's actually a replacement.
That's
I was unaware of that.
that's it's a great point. So I'm going to
'Cause
strike.
That's the only thing that allows us to handle it the way we are.
I'm going to strike the word relocate and say replace,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what has happened. Sorry about that. Replace and replace deck. So. So going through these, so under section 14, table 1, in the ordinance, it makes the following conclusions based on the applicable provisions of section 16D of the ordinance. So 1, that it will maintain safe and healthful conditions. By a vote, the board found that this was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes,
George,
Yes.
I 2, that's 4 in favor, none opposed. 2, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I 2, that's 4 in favor, none opposed. 3, will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. That's based on application submissions and a matter of public record. That's our standard language. Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I 2, I'm in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed. 4, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat. By a vote, the board found this standard was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I am in favor as well. 5, will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland waters. So by a vote, the board found this standard was met. Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes,
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor, so that's 4 in favor, none opposed. 6, will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan. So, Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I'm in favor as well. 7, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use. So by a vote, the board found this standard was met. Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor, so 4 in favor, none opposed. And this is the long one, Bert. So it's number 8, is in conformance with the provisions of section 15, land use standards. By a vote, the board found this standard was met based on the evidence in the record and further as follows. So A, minimum lot standards. Minimum lot, so
Yeah, I think
yes.
that's it.
Principal and accessory structures. Yes. Campgrounds. Not applicable. D, individual private campsites.
NA,
E, commercial and industrial uses.
NA,
F, parking areas.
NA,
G, roads and driveways.
NA,
H, signs.
NA,
I, stormwater runoff.
yes. Okay.
J, septic waste disposal systems.
NA.
K, essential services.
NA,
L, mineral exploration and extraction.
NA,
M, agriculture.
NA,
N, timber harvesting and land management roads.
NA,
O, clearing or removal of vegetation for activities other than timber harvesting.
NA,
P, hazard trees, storm damaged trees, and dead tree removal.
NA,
Q, exemptions to clearing and vegetation removal requirements.
NA,
Revegetation requirements are
NA.
S, erosion and sedimentation control.
NA,
Shoreline stabilization. Soils,
NA,
water quality.
applicable.
What?
Stormwater.
Stormwater.
So yes. W, historical and archaeological sites.
NA,
X, resource protection.
NA,
So we have 4 things that we'll be voting on. From the top, they are minimum lot standards, principal and accessory structures, stormwater runoff, and water quality. Those are the things. So by a vote, the board found that this standard was met. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes,
George,
Yes.
4 in favor, none opposed. And standard condition that we have, Bert. Conditions of approval need to meet SLZ ordinance findings in section 16D. Manage stormwater runoff from new or expanded structures. In accordance with section 15I of the Belgrade Shoreline Zoning Ordinance and Maine Department of Environmental Protection's best management practices as outlined in the conservation practices for homeowners publication. Richard, do we have those around here, by the way? That conservation practices for homeowners publication? Do you know?
Not I know.
Okay. I didn't know.
We've been here before at the last meeting, and my recollection is Anthony, rather than mailing that out, changed it so that there's either a reference to it that goes out in the mail, a link goes out in the mail, or there's a link on the town website to the DEP website where
Okay.
that document can be found.
So as long as we continue to be consistent to point people in that direction, because we're referencing that specific thing.
Yeah,
As long as we can do that. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, so,
yeah, it can't very well require something if we don't inform people how to
Right.
comply with it.
right. So such measures are to be put in place prior to building use. Note, this is a standing condition that applies to all permits unless deemed unnecessary by the planning board. So does anybody think this is not applicable? So
I think it's
very much so. So it stays. Any other conditions of approval needed for this one? Yeah. Okay. So based on the above findings of fact and conclusions of law on 5/5/22, the Town of Belgrade Planning Board approved by a vote. We haven't done that yet. The shoreline permit of, this is Walter Keys.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Should we make a note in the paperwork that we understand that this is a non-conforming structure that got moved, and then when it got moved up, it went up on the fact that not being non-conforming, but then it passed the threshold of 75 foot line, or should we make a note to that in the paperwork?
Well, that was one reason why I asked Peter to make sure that we describe the project as a replacement. So, and, you know, it's on the record, of course, that we're viewing this as being moved to the greatest practical extent.
Okay,
So I think
that's covered.
anything else, we don't need to do anything, because we wouldn't in other situations
Right.
similar to this.
But it's a good question, and that's,
Yeah, no, it's a legitimate question.
I agree.
Sure.
Good question. So I want to make sure we vote on the approval or denial of this. So in voting to approve this based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law. So Craig,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes,
George,
Yes.
and I too. So that's 4 in favor, none opposed. Bert, the application or the permit will be mailed to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's efforts tonight.
You're welcome, and thanks for bearing with us. I'm sorry for the echo that we had.
No, the solar panel discussion was interesting. So I hope you move forward and allow us to maintain Belgrade, but also allow folks to have the opportunity to use their land if they so see fit. But I think at the end of the day, the protection of Belgrade is number one.
Right, number one. Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
Have a good
You as
evening.
well.
See ya. There you go. Okay, so Richard, I have, here's the findings of fact for Mr. Keesaws. Is that how you pronounce his name? Is it Kiso? I'm sorry. That's for that one. All right, donate. Okay. And I believe
this minutes were done with by Alex, isn't it?
I don't know, but we're gonna do it, ask for a CEO update first.
Oh, no.
So,
I'm ahead of myself.
Verify that it's written down. Are we ready to move on?
yes, sir.
So I have 5 shoreline zoning applications, 1 non-complete. And One is a shed on a gravel pad more than 100 feet from the shoreline. The other one is some pavers alongside the garage to keep the garage from flooding. And I think those are pretty simple, but,
Yeah.
so, especially the shed. But, we had talked about the possibility of signing off stuff like that by myself. I don't know how that's, if that's applicable here or not. The other three are further in depth than those two. I think they definitely need to cover.
So that's fine more to that what we have on deck already.
I'm sorry,
Those are 5 additional
5.
applications. Besides
Well, no, there's 5 total that I have right now,
pending.
one which is not. So technically 4 pending. So
Richard, the application that involves the pavers,
Yeah. I just came in, yes.
yeah, that's something you can't approve yourself, or?
I'm asking, it's within the shoreline zone, and as far as, it's 192 square feet of pavers, and they're well under their footprint for the, where they are in reference to the water, so I felt like it would be something that.
Yeah, what about the 20%?
I'll have to review, George, but I'm quite certain they fall in that too.
Yeah. I just, I was looking at, what planning board has to review versus what you can review. And I don't know where that fits, but
But impervious surface, I guess, pavers being impervious, these particular ones, I guess, they
Yeah.
actually
Is this-
do make pervious ones.
you said how much square feet?
192 square feet.
Is this gonna be like a little patio kind of thing?
Kind of like that, but I guess their garage is getting flooded, so they want to put gravel and then some pavers. I felt like with, a close review, I could certainly.
Depending on how you look at it, I mean, a patio is considered an accessory structure.
With pavers. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we actually denied one for one of the select board members. You remember that, Peter?
I do.
So, and then the last thing was do we need to do anything to ensure that I can mark trees as we had discussed? Was that between us at the side meeting, or was that?
There might have been the special meeting that we discussed.
So, just to update you, Peter and Craig, what Andy does in Rome is he spray paints the bottom of the trees that he deems okay to cut down. And so I'm thinking maybe we can do something like that. But I thought about it earlier, and it's like, what's holding somebody back from going behind the same color spray paint? And they want to take down 8 more trees.
You're talking.
I really, at first I thought it was just a great idea, because that way you can go
You're
back to
right.
the property and I could say, okay, those 2 was the ones that I approved. But I didn't approve those 4 because they're not spray painted. You can buy a bowl of orange paint or whatever you want, whatever.
Can-
I think that we can come up with something though, because what it is I'm running into a lot of people with tree issues right now. And also I found from one lady that, she just wanted to cut down a tree for us that is a healthy tree, and obviously I denied that, but next year I may go back to that property and not remember. that I said,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I just feel like there should be a way of being able to do that.
You know what a GoPro camera is?
Yes.
You go on the property and you.
I'm not sure there's any way to protect against the person that is so devious and so committed to violating the ordinance that, that they, would start spray painting trees, the basic trees, I mean, barges run into the same problem.
Yep.
on selective cuts but but you know, I'm playing the odds, right?
Right, yeah, so I mean, I think it would be advantageous to do that, because like you said, man, I think most people in this town want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
As a general rule, so, I guess my question is, do we have to have anything in writing of any sort to make it so that I can scrape it?
So what you can do is when you spray things, trees, maybe you can come with the template,
Yeah, stencil,
stencil,
yeah, I thought about that.
special stencil that is one size, as long as it's something that you design,
Right,
spray the stencil. It's difficult to come up with the same stencil.
So here's my thought about that. When Andrew first mentioned that at that meeting, I was thinking, my first thought was, oh, we should change our ordinance to allow us to do that. But the more I think about it, it's really just you, it's sort of two things. One is you're providing guidance to the applicant. These are the trees that you can apply for to get removed. And it's sort of a part of your code enforcement job, right? In the sense that this is how you're ensuring compliance.
I agree.
And that doesn't require an ordinance.
I just want to verify that, I just want to verify so that I'm not doing something illegal or, you know, against property owner's wishes type of deal.
Yeah, it seems to me like an administrative kind of thing, you know.
That's fine.
I don't know, others may disagree, but, I mean, I've done a lot of tree marking back when I was younger and for, you know, the park. You know, it's how you keep the waters honest, you know, so.
So how do you mark, prove that you approve that? What about the person just cut below the mark? I mean, how,
Because you can't uproot a tree, so in other words, you have to leave a stump. So what I would do is leave a mark or fence or whatever it may be at the very lowest point to the ground that I can get type of
so
deal.
you cannot do, well.
You can stump grind, I guess,
You can
Yeah.
stop
technically,
that.
so, yeah.
And that's only within 100 feet, beyond 100 feet.
Right,
And
I'm
that's
talking,
still, you know, that's still part of your canopy and everything.
Yep.
And if someone does fit into having enough trees, they can cut one down for aesthetics. So just because they're cutting it down for aesthetics doesn't mean that they can't do it. If they fit, if they have the right amount of trees and the right canopy,
Right.
they
Yeah.
can still cut that down for
Right.
aesthetics.
and this was the only tree in the area.
I don't know if this is what, you know, drove Andrew to do this or not, because he's relatively a newer code enforcement officer in Rome, but Rome historically has had huge problems with people just going wild cutting trees. And I only know this because even when Rich Baker was still working at DEP, he was routinely going out of Rome to deal with issues associated with inappropriate tree cutting. And it was sort of what you were describing. You know, perfectly healthy tree, I want to get rid of it, you know, but then I don't really have any reason other than that. But I mean, I didn't even know this was really much of an issue until it came up in that meeting, you know, because my perception is it's not really an issue, but having been out once trolling on Long Pond now with Rich, man, oh man, has the landscape changed along the shore, and it's not because of illegal cutting, it's because of the microburst, but you know, what was said at, no, I can't, yeah, you were at the meeting, you were sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
You know, it was that people are sort of, I don't know, they're really getting worried about the big trees hanging over their camps, and so some people are cutting them down without getting a permit, apparently.
And they should be, because they're gonna kill somebody. What the town should be doing is taking it, you know, allowing those to be cut and doing a replanting to get younger trees positioned.
Mhm.
and key areas and just allow, because those trees, they're over 100 years old, they're over 100 feet tall.
Mhm.
And we had just had a perfect example last July. And we did have a couple of people get, well, one person get killed. And, you know, and with these old camps and you've got these big trees hanging over the top of them.
It's gonna happen.
I was surprised how many dead pine there are on the shoreline, on the wrong end of Long Pond, along the shore. Something's killing them. I don't know what it is, but
Old age and ants. You know, arborists can pick up on them, but a lot of time people don't pick up on the ants being in the trees. A lot of those old pine trees, you know, a lot of them are rotted on the inside.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
can't
besides
tell.
the ant.
Mhm.
Well, a licensed arborist can.
yeah,
I can't, is what I mean, I can't tell.
yeah.
Right.
So I noticed an instance where I went to a call about an illegal shed and this person's property had freshly cut trees all over the place. Stumps, I should say, but there's still sawdust everywhere. So people are just doing what they want, I guess. You know, some people, to some extent. And, but I do like the idea of the simple marking. I think it'll help. I think it's gonna solve all issues of people illegal cutting.
Richard, my take on this is we're doing nothing like that now. We need to improve. Marking the trees would be an improvement. It may not be perfect, but getting somewhere is better than nowhere.
Yeah.
So I really like the stencil idea, if you could have it. Some cool high-vis spray paint color on a template. Bang it out. And it, to me, again, I think what George talked about before, it's an administrative task. It helps you perform your job better. I don't see this as a need for changing anything in the ordinance to help you do your job better. Right. So that'd be my take.
Basically my conclusion for right now as far as that.
Okay. So that was about marking trees. Now, you had a question about, is there some amount of those permit applications that came in that you could do and not come to the,
Right, so the shed beyond 100 feet, it's just a shed going on gravel. Beyond 100-foot mark, I think that would be simple. As far as the pavers go, I think that would be something. I haven't delved into either one of these yet. The paver one just came in yesterday, actually.
And is that also 100 feet back?
I don't believe so, but it meets the requirements from impervious surfaces on it, if I recall. So that's why I figured it was something simple. But as I said, the other applications are a little bit more in depth. So I would like them to come to the board for sure.
The issue with the patio down in the village was Carol Johnson and her contractor didn't realize that a patio is considered a structure. And so it has to meet the setback from the water line, high water line. And her lot has a shoreline that goes like a W. And so, you know, it's almost impossible to meet that setback in some places. So.
okay. All righty. Thank you very much. Next up, minutes from April 21st. And you had a question as to who did these, is that right?
Yes,
You want to know if Anthony did them or Alex?
I thought it was Alex.
And, oh, you sure, that was first crack. No, the first crack at it was the special meeting, is that right?
Oh, there it
So this is Anthony.
is.
Very good. Any edits? No? Entertain a motion then.
I move a motion to approve the minutes from April 21st.
As
I'll
submitted
second.
and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Craig?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes,
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed, minutes approved. Thank you very much. I think that covers it. Motion to adjourn,
Move a motion to adjourn?
Second.
seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? So Craig, Sarah,
Yes.
George?
No.
I'm in favor of majority rules. All right, thanks, everybody. I think we're in good shape. So what I'm gonna do is